What's up, guys? I'm James Withy, and today we're going to talk about why teenagers should wait until they're older to get tattooed. Alright, so like I said, in this video, we're going to be talking about why I think teenagers should wait until they get older to get tattooed. Now, I'm really hoping that this video is useful to both teenagers and parents of teenagers that are, kind of browsing around and trying to figure out what's best for their child in terms of, letting them get a tattoo and committing to one. It's important mentioning that the opinions that I'm going to be giving in this video are just my opinion. People might disagree with what I've got to say, but at the same time, these opinions are based on my professional experience as a tattoo artist, and a lot of tattoo artists, if you ask them, they're going to have a lot of the same viewpoints as I do. So with that said, let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to be discussing exactly in this video. In this video, I'm going to be giving the reasons why I think teenagers should wait until they get older to get tattooed. And then afterwards, I'm going to go ahead and give some tips for teenagers that are looking to get tattooed if they decide to go through it anyway despite my advice. So pretty simple video. Let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so if you're a teenager and you're watching this video, chances are, if you've bounced the idea of getting a tattoo around, like bounced that idea off your parents or like other adults around you, chances are you've gotten a lot of people telling you not to get a tattoo because they think that you are going to pick something that you regret when you're older. That you're basically going to pick something stupid and that you're not going to like it once you become a fucking 30, 40, 50-year-old man or woman or whatever it is. Now, before I start listing the reasons why I think it's a bad idea to get a tattoo if you're a teenager, let me go ahead and clarify that this reason, like that you're going to regret something that you pick now when you get older, I think that's the least valid reason for why somebody should tell you not to get a tattoo as a teenager. And the reason why is because, like, if you watch my last video that I released, it's all about like whether or not tattoos have to have meaning. I personally don't believe that a tattoo has to have a giant amount of meaning to be a cool tattoo. And while other people might tell you like, all right, well, little Jimmy, you might want a skateboarding tattoo, but when you're a 40-year-old man, 50-year-old man, and you don't like to skateboard anymore, you're going to really regret that tattoo. I feel like that's bullshit right there. Just because you don't like to skateboard anymore when you get older doesn't mean that you can't look back at that tattoo and kind of like reminisce on the times when you really did love to skateboard. I feel like it's very likely that even if you don't have interest in the same things that you have interest as a teenager when you're older, you're still not going to regret the tattoo as long as you don't do something stupid like get your boyfriend or girlfriend's name tattooed on you or whatever, and then you end up breaking up with them like most teenagers do when they get older, like that sort of thing. So don't factor that in as far as your reason for waiting until you get older to get a tattoo. I feel like I said, that's the least valid reason. So now that I've gotten that out the way and pretty much let you know that I think that's a bogus ass reason to tell somebody not to get a tattoo as a teenager, let me tell you what the reasons are that I firmly believe are real reasons of why you should wait until you're older to get a tattoo if you are somebody that's like 16, 17, 18 years old. The number one reason why I feel like it's a really great idea to wait until you're older to get a tattoo is because when you're 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, your body is most likely not done growing yet. And this might seem like, something that's pretty trivial, something that won't matter a whole lot, but I'm gonna tell you what, I have met a lot of clients that are like in their 30s and 40s that have had like a tattoo that was on an area of their body, like let's say for instance the outer like upper arm area, like outside of the bicep area. I've met a lot of clients that have tattoos on that area of their body that when they were younger and they got the tattoo done, it was totally centered and fit perfectly. And then when they got older, the tattoo moved from being in the middle of their arm to being like on the front of their fucking arm. And the reason for that is because obviously they grew, they got bigger, their arm got bigger, the skin doesn't really grow in a totally uniform, symmetrical way a lot of times. So basically that tattoo moved a couple inches and ended up becoming a crooked tattoo just because they didn't wait a few more years until they were done growing. So what I just described there is a pretty simple example of how the positioning of a tattoo and the fit of a tattoo can become compromised if a person's body changes drastically from the transition of being a teenager to being an adult. It's very worth mentioning that this problem actually worsens with the size and complexity of the tattoo. So the scale of the tattoo really matters a lot. If the tattoo gets larger, and for instance, like you're going to do like a half sleeve on the outside of the upper arm instead of just one tattoo that's centered, not only is there like, a simple like type of composition that's going to get affected in terms of just one thing moving to another place. But a lot of times there's complex like flow elements and shit that will complement the anatomy in more ways than just one. So for instance, like if I'm doing a half sleeve on the upper arm, I'm going to create round shapes that kind of round out with the shape of the deltoid. I'm going to have stuff that's cutting across with the way that the tricep cuts across the arm. I'm going to have other stuff that's kind of flowing up with the direction of the bicep. So all those things in combination, like if that tattoo moves because the person gets older and it starts warping and stretching in different ways that are kind of unpredictable, not only can one thing be fucked up in terms of positioning and composition now, but multiple things can get fucked up that we're all actually interacting and flowing with each other. So the problem really does become exacerbated to a high degree when we're talking about more complex compositions in tattooing. And any good tattoo artist is going to try to make a tattoo so that it fits your body and complements your anatomy and musculature perfectly. And it's just impossible for them to predict how that tattoo is going to change as the years pass, from you transitioning from like a teenager or a young adult into somebody that's more full grown, where their body is pretty much stabilizing in terms of like how large they're going to be, how muscular they're going to be, how tall they're going to be, all these different things. So of course, like adults, their body type can fluctuate too. Like if a chick has a baby or something like that, or if a dude starts getting into his later 30s and just starts gaining a little bit more body fat. But I feel like it's much less and much less likely than it would be for a young adult or a teenager, because as a teenager, a lot of times you're not even done growing height-wise, and it can be a huge problem. So another reason why if you're a teenager you might want to wait until you get older to get a tattoo is because when you're a teenager, if you're paying for your own tattoo, it's very likely you're going to have a really small budget for that tattoo. Because most teenagers, let's face it, man, I mean, you guys, just like I did when I was a teenager, you guys work at jobs that are either minimum wage or just a little bit above minimum wage. So if you're getting a tattoo, you got to consider, like, I mean, obviously this thing lasts for the rest of your life. So if you can only get that tattoo once, would you want to get like a cheaper tattoo that's a little bit lower quality because that's all you can afford? Or would you rather save up and wait until you're older to get a really high quality tattoo that you're going to think is awesome 10, 20, 30 years down the line? So like earlier I was talking about how people try to criticize teenagers and say, oh, you have bad ideas for tattoos, your concept is going to be stupid and it's something you're going to regret. I don't believe in that. But I do believe that if teenagers are paying for their own tattoos and they have a very small budget, it's very likely that even if you like the concept, when you get older, you're going to look at that tattoo and you're going to judge it as a lower quality tattoo, and you're going to regret not saving up and getting a better quality tattoo once you got more paid. All right, so a really great analogy I just thought of to illustrate my point on this one is I'm going to talk about cars. When you're a teenager, the only kind of car you can afford, if you're like me when I was a teenager, is like a little $2,000, $2,500 beater. I'm saying like a 1993 Toyota Corolla or something like that just gets you from point A to point B. It's not a nice car. When you're a teenager, you might think it's a cool car, but when you become older and you're able to afford cars like a Lexus IS 350 or a Mercedes-Benz E400 or something like that, you're gonna look back at that Corolla, and even though you appreciated it in the moment, you're gonna think, damn, that car's kind of a piece of shit, I wouldn't be caught dead driving that car. Now imagine that cars are like tattoos. Imagine that if you bought a car, that's the car that you have to drive for the rest of your life. So if you think of it from that perspective, as a teenager, would you be so quick to cop that 93 Corolla? Or would you rather wait for something that is something that you could probably drive for years and years and years to come and never look at it and think, damn, man, I deserve better than this, I could have had better than this, you know? So if you really think about it that way, tattoos are so permanent that if you go ahead and you get like the budget tattoo when you're younger, thinking that it's cool, there's a very high likelihood that when you get older, you're gonna look at that tattoo and you're gonna be like, fuck man, I should have waited until I could afford better quality. So right about now, there's probably some of you guys out there thinking, that's not gonna be a problem for me because my parents are gonna pay for my tattoo. If your parents are paying for your tattoo, that situation alone, in and of itself, can pose its own problems in terms of the quality of tattoo that you end up with. And the reason why is because, think about it, like most likely, I know there's exception to this, but most likely the reason your parents are going to pay for your tattoo is because you've been hounding them, asking them for a tattoo, and you've twisted their arm to the point to where now they're finally caving and they're accepting that you're going to, grow up and spread your wings and blossom into a young adult or whatever the fuck it is. Now, from the parents' perspective, there's a very high likelihood that they don't even like tattoos or don't even believe in tattoos. And if that's the case, they're probably not going to see the value in spending a lot of money on a tattoo. So your budget shrinks just based on that. And if your parent is the type of person that likes tattoos, the same problem can happen because it's very hard for them to justify paying a really large amount of money for a nice custom tattoo because it's not something that they're going to get to keep. It's not on their body. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy because you think, well, fuck, my parents not selfish like that. But I see it all the time. When parents come in and they have their child with them and they're the ones paying for the tattoo, typically they're really bargain shopping super hard, and they don't want to spend 1 cent more than what they absolutely have to on the tattoo. And when you come into the entire situation with that mindset, you're bound to get a lower quality piece because you're so afraid of spending more money on the tattoo to make it like a higher quality. Now, another problem, in addition to the budget being small because your parents are paying for the tattoo, is that when a parent pays for a tattoo, typically what they're going to do is they're going to micromanage the shit out of the entire process in terms of having creative control over the tattoo. They need to approve of the idea that you get in terms of what you actually want to get tattooed on your body. It has to like basically pass through their artistic filter in terms of what they think is okay and what's not, what they think is cool and what's not. And what that does is it limits your options tremendously in terms of what kind of piece you can get. So if your parents paying for your tattoo, like I said, that can pose its own problems in and of itself, and it's not an ideal situation compared to just waiting until you're older when you're an adult and you can make your own decisions and have total control over the situation in terms of budget and creative input. Yet another reason why you should wait until you're older to get a tattoo is that as a full-grown adult, you're going to have more tattoo artists to choose from in terms of variety. And this point right here really doesn't apply to people that are like 18, 19 years old, you know, teenagers, or maybe 21, 20-year-old, like young adults. This is more geared towards the people that are 16, 17 years old out there looking to get their first piece. I'm going to tell you right now that if you're looking to get a high-quality tattoo, most tattoo artists that are at a pretty high level of skill are not going to tattoo anybody under the age of 18, including myself. I don't tattoo anybody that's a minor. If you're not 18, you can't get a tattoo from me. The reasons why I have that policy are many, and I'll probably make a separate video just explaining that, but I do not tattoo people that are under 18 whatsoever. And like I said, a lot of other artists that are at an advanced level of their career, they're going to have the exact same policy. So if you wait until you're older and you wait until you're actually of age to get a tattoo, you're going to have a lot more variety in terms of artists that you can shop around with so that you can pick the person that's going to be the best fit for the tattoo you're looking to get. The last reason why I think it's a good idea to wait until you're older to get a tattoo is because you are going to have more options in terms of placement of the tattoo once you're sure about what you want to do in terms of like your career path. So as a teenager, like a lot of teenagers, they really feel very strongly about like, well, I'm going to be a forensic scientist, or I'm going to be like a doctor or a lawyer, or I'm going to be a motorcycle mechanic, or whatever it is when they get older. I'm going to tell you right now that in my experience, a lot of teenagers change their mind when they get older, and they do it right around the age of like 22 to 25 years old, somewhere around there. There's nothing wrong with that. It's totally natural. But what I'm saying is that it's very difficult for you to know for sure what you're going to be doing for a living permanently long term when you get older. And, you know, obviously some jobs, they care about whether or not you have visible tattoos. So, you know, if you end up getting a tattoo when you're a teenager, and the reason why you put it where you put it on your body is simply because you're trying to make sure that it's like foolproof in terms of whether or not it's going to prevent you from getting a job, that right there is not an ideal situation. You want to be able to put a tattoo wherever the fuck you want it, you know? And the only way to do that with any degree of certainty and whether or not you're making the right decision is to wait until you're older and you're settled into your life, in your career, as a professional, doing whatever you're doing long-term permanently. So I think it's also worth mentioning that when I'm talking about like waiting until you get quote-unquote older to get a tattoo, what I mean by that is waiting until you're a young adult. So you don't have to be like 30, 35 years old to get a tattoo. I'm not trying to say that by any means. What I'm saying is just wait until you get like a little bit more established, and that can really vary from person to person in terms of when that's going to happen. If I were to generalize everybody, I would say the sweet spot is like when you're anywhere between like 23 and 26 years old. And the reason for that is because most people when they're 23 to 26, that's when they're going to be fully done growing, and their body type is going to stay generally the same for at least the next like decade and a half. And also that typically tends to be around the time when somebody like actually knows what they're going to do for a living, has a better job, is making better money. You know, a lot of kids that go into college right when they're like 18 years old, they're going to be graduating around that time when they're like 23, 24, 25 years old. And that's when you're actually going to have some disposable income to dump into a tattoo that's really high quality. Alright, so now that I've talked about a lot of the reasons why I think it's a bad idea to get a tattoo as a teenager and why you should wait until you get a little bit older, let me acknowledge that there's probably, if you're a teenager and you're watching this video, there's probably some of you out there that are looking at this shit and you're thinking, man, fuck this guy. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go and get tattooed and there's nothing nobody can tell me to stop me. That's pretty normal to have that type of mindset. When I was younger, I was really headstrong, and I did the exact same thing. I ran out and I got a whole bunch of tattoos. Most of them suck. I really regret them in terms of like the quality of how they came out. Now that I'm a full grown ass man and I can get way doper tattoos. But like I said, I acknowledge that it's natural to feel the way you feel and want to jump out there and take the risk anyway. So in the second part of this video, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you guys some tips to help you minimize the risk of getting a tattoo that you're going to regret later. Alright, so the first tip I can give you is to start small. The reason why is because, like I was saying earlier in the video, a lot of times the tattoo that you get when you're a teenager is going to be something that you regret when you're older because of the quality of the tattoo or because the positioning of the tattoo has changed, like as your body is growing and either gaining weight or height or like musculature or whatever the fuck. You want to start small so that later on, if you're like, in your mid-20s or like early 30s or something, if you decide that you don't like that tattoo anymore, you can either rework it, or you can cover it up, or you can add other tattoos around it to mask any of the flaws or problems that it has because you got it when you were younger and had either a lower quality tattoo or something that doesn't really fit that great anymore. Start small, don't bite off more than you can chew. There's a lot of teenagers out there that have this delusion where they think that they're gonna get like a big badass sleeve and they're gonna be the only kid in high school that has an awesome sleeve or whatever. But the truth is, shit like that just really doesn't happen. Teenagers can't afford a tattoo that's that magnitude. Oftentimes they really can't formulate a proper idea or like a theme for a large project, something of that scale. And it's really imperative that you recognize that maybe later you're going to be a little bit more better suited to make those type of decisions than you are early in your life. So start small, that way later on, when you end up deciding you want to fix the problem, if you decide you want to fix the problem, it's a small fix instead of a huge fix. It's way easier to fix a baseball sized tattoo than it is to fix an entire back piece. Okay, so tip number 2 is to avoid places on your body for the tattoo that are gonna grow a lot. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're a dude, try to avoid getting tattoos on your arms because your arms are probably gonna get bigger as you get older and you start kind of growing into your frame. If you're a chick, try to avoid getting tattoos on like your stomach or like your hips or like thighs and stuff like that because that stuff tends to grow as you get older too. And you won't really know how much it's gonna grow until you start hitting like your early 20s, mid 20s. So avoid the areas that are gonna be a little bit more prone to gain a lot of weight or a lot of musculature, or areas that are going to be more affected by you getting taller. That way later on your tattoo has a higher chance of looking the way that it did when it was first done. This next tip should be pretty obvious, and that is that you want to avoid getting tattooed in areas that are very visible to the public when you're a teenager. And we discussed the reasons for this earlier. You really don't know what you want to do for a living for sure. You haven't settled into your career path as a professional, as a young adult. And it would be really unwise to get tattoos in areas that might stop you or limit you from getting certain types of jobs later on. Know, however, that there are degrees to this. So like for instance, if you get tattooed on the forearm, that is a pretty visible area that could stop you from getting certain jobs later on. But if you wanted to, you could always cover that with a long sleeve shirt if you're willing to wear one of those every day to work. A really even more riskier situation would be if you got tattooed in an area like on your hands or on your face or your neck or something like that. That right there, in the tattoo industry, we have a term for that, and it's called a job stopper. So you really don't want to get a job stopper tattoo when you're a teenager if you don't even know what kind of fucking job that you want yet, like as a permanent job that you're going to work at as an adult. If I were you, I would stay away from those areas. Try to only get tattooed in areas that are going to be both easy to cover and, like I said earlier, areas that aren't going to change a whole lot in terms of like their size or shape as you grow into your frame as an adult. Okay, so another tip I can give you guys is to try to make sure you're saving up the most money you possibly can for the tattoo you're getting as a teenager, and also make sure that you pick the right artist. Now, the reason for this is because, like I said earlier, if you end up having a low budget for the tattoo as a teenager and then later on when you're an adult you have a lot more money to throw at tattoos and get higher quality work, you're gonna look at that tattoo that you got when you were a teenager and you're gonna think, fuck man, I could have got a better one, and it's gonna stick out next to your other tattoos as the one that's obviously lower quality than the others. So as a result, you're gonna either wanna like rework that tattoo or cover it up or whatever, And you can minimize the chance of that happening by saving up the absolute most money you can to get the highest quality piece you can afford as a teenager. That way there's a lower chance of you looking at it when you're an adult and being like, shit man, why did I get that one? Now likewise, you really want to make sure that you're picking the right tattoo artist to get your tattoo as a teenager. Young people, if they don't have a lot of experience with looking at tattoos and shopping around for tattoos and they've never had one before, a lot of times they make the mistake of thinking that all tattoo artists are created equal. It is not the case. There are many different skill levels in terms of how good a tattoo artist can be, and there's a lot of different styles that tattoo artists can do, and usually tattoo artists will only do one of those styles. So you want to make sure that you're picking somebody that is at least an intermediate or advanced skill level at tattooing. That way you're not going to regret it when you get older. And you also want to make sure you're picking somebody that has the style of tattooing that's in line with what you envision for your long-term plan going into adulthood. Alright, so this last piece of advice is actually not for any teenagers that are watching this video, but it's directed at parents of teenagers that are allowing their kid to get a tattoo. Now, if you've decided to let your kid get a tattoo and you're, shopping around, assisting them with the whole process in terms of like helping them pick an artist and, paying for the tattoo possibly, you might be watching this video because you're trying to research on how to get your teenager the best possible tattoo that you can. If that's the case, the piece of advice that I can give you that I feel is most important is once you're sure that your teenager has the right artist, like in terms of like their level of skill, make sure that you fight the urge to have a really large amount of creative control in terms of the way the process works in the tattoo. So what I mean by that is don't go in trying to micromanage the tattoo artist. Don't insist that you have a really high amount of creative control over what your teenager gets, like conceptually. Don't interfere in any of that process. Don't try to micromanage the consult. Don't do any of that stuff. Just take a step back and just watch from the sidelines, and you'll probably be in good shape as long as you pick the right artist to begin with. If you do not have confidence in your teenager in terms of their decision-making ability and their how capable they are of getting a good tattoo without your assistance, like as far as your creative input, then they probably shouldn't be getting a tattoo, and you shouldn't be allowing them to if you don't trust them with that decision-making power. Okay, so that's about it. In this video, I have discussed reasons why I think it's a good idea for teenagers to wait until they're young adults to get a tattoo. And I've also given some tips for those teenagers that are a little bit more headstrong and unruly and refuse to take my advice on that, for how they can maximize the possibility of them getting a tattoo that they won't regret. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Just know that, by no means am I trying to tell you guys what to do with this video. You are your own person. You can do whatever you want. But the reason I made this video is because I want to try to help increase the chances of people only getting good tattoos and people getting tattoos that they're going to love for years to come. So just know that if you have questions, you're definitely welcome to leave them in the comments. If you have, anything that you need advice on, go ahead and comment below. I'm here for you guys. I'm going to do my best to answer all the questions that I feel like are relevant. If you guys found this video helpful, please hit the like button below. That helps me out massively with the growth of my channel. And yeah, we'll try to come up with another video pretty soon here for you guys. And I really hope you enjoyed it. Have a nice day.